September 1988. It is the start of the fall semester at the University of California, Davis, where Cheryl Welch is beginning life as a law student.
I grew up in Sacramento, California. I was a receptionist at Kaiser Hospital for 10 years. I decided that I wanted to go back to school, so I went to UC Davis.
But as her studies get underway, things change.
I know what normal life is, and life became very abnormal.
It starts with her telephone.
Usually you pick up a phone, you hear dial tone, but my phone, there would be click noises. There'd be a long pause, then static.
She has it checked, but the strange noises continue. Cheryl becomes concerned. It's the first of many appliances that behave erratically in her presence.
Things in my environment, all of the electrical equipment didn't work anymore. My computer, my TV.
Her unease grows as she discovers it's not only machines that act strangely around her.
Police cars started to follow me. I had a rock thrown at my car. Somebody tried to drive me off the road. I mean, I've never had a ticket. I've never taken drugs. People in my environment were acting out of character. I was acting my normal self, and people were acting weird. People turned against me. People would stare at you. Students would swear and spit on me.
Weirder still, random strangers on the street seem to know exactly what she's thinking.
I felt like I was surveilled. I thought somebody could read my thoughts.
Cheryl's personal life falls apart as friends and family drift away. Then, she's fired from her job.
It was like shock and awe. For 3 years, it was like that. I realized, you know, this wasn't going to go away, despite my best efforts. That was a really depressing, blackest moment of my life. I just cried and cried and cried. I thought, why not just end it?
Fearing for her sanity, Cheryl seeks help.
So I went to my advisor, and I was having trouble academically, and she helped me get through this, and he was the only one that believed me.
Her advisor comes to a quick conclusion. Cheryl is the victim of deliberate and organized campaign of harassment. But who is behind it?
First, we checked out. We thought, maybe there's a psychology experiment. They're trying to stress you out. There was no psychology experiment. So I hired private investigators, and I tried to figure out if there were any bugs in my apartment. Nothing. And talking to my advisor, we both figured only the government would have this kind of control over your telephone or what you did in the privacy of your apartment.
Deciding to investigate, Cheryl gains access to government documents. They reveal the unthinkable. A top-secret experiment is subjecting everyday citizens to mind control.
Major countries have developed this secret mind control technology, especially Russia and the United States.
She's convinced the people who harassed her were under mind control and didn't even know it.
Somebody is making them do things, you know, without their knowing it.
But why choose Cheryl?
You're going to need to experiment on a lot of people. You can't do it ethically, so you're going to do it covertly, you know.
She thinks she knows what put her on the government's radar.
Before I went to UC Davis, I went to the Army recruiting office. I filled out the forms, I put in my application, but I went to UC Davis instead. And then after that was when this happened. After networking with other victims, they have that connection. Former people who applied to the CIA, former people who have relatives in the government or the CIA are often targets.
Are the minds of innocent citizens being controlled by government-sanctioned experiments? Is Cheryl Welch telling the truth, or are her claims absurd? Just another conspiracy theory that's impossible to prove? Maybe. But not if you listen to Nick Begich.
I think there's some good evidence that Cheryl Welch and many of the other people I've spoken with have been victimized by this electromagnetic mind control experiments. The weapons of this century aren't bombs and bullets and ordnance, but electromagnetic energy targeting the human being, which is a greatest revolution in military affairs since gunpowder.
Begich is an expert in government mind control. He is convinced the Pentagon has mastered a technology once thought to be science fiction, the ability to broadcast information directly into the human brain.
Our government began spending a lot of time looking at how to modify behavior of human beings. Going back to the Korean War, in fact, in a publication, Low-Intensity Conflict in Modern Technology, they have a chapter on electromagnetic weapon systems, being able to not just to debilitate someone, but actually even to stimulate certain activities within the brain.
But how?
HAARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, which started as a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy. This is a very large array or field of antennas based in Alaska, radio frequency antennas.
HAARP antennas transmit powerful radio signals into the upper atmosphere to study the effects on wireless communications. But Begich says HAARP can also be used for more sinister ends.
HAARP has announced several other programs and campaigns, and there's two areas that I got very concerned about. One was weather modification applications. The other was the effect on human beings. If you can modulate a signal that the brain locks onto, recognizes, and begins to mirror or follow the frequency following response. The brain rhythms change, then it creates a chemical cascade within the brain and the emotions change. Now the resolution gets finer and finer and finer. And it used to just to be about triggering emotions. You could change people's brain chemistry pretty readily, change their emotional state pretty easily. But when you get down to the idea of thoughts and being able to manipulate those, that requires a different kind of sophistication.
Can we hear sounds without using our ears? Not only is it possible, says Begich, he can prove it using sound recordist Brad Daw.
So what I'm going to demonstrate is a earth pulse sound wave. And what this is an infrasound device. It's just a small electronic circuit that we run a CD player playing some Bach into our circuit and then comes out through two piezoelectric transducers. So I'm going to place these transducers on your face. You're going to block your ears tightly. We put those in contact with the skin and listen.
Yeah.
So what do you hear?
I hear the music, yeah, loudly.
Right in the center of their forehead, inside their head, they'll hear Bach, just like they would with their ears, but the ears aren't involved.
It wasn't through my ears at all. It was basically, it felt like kind of it was coming from the middle of my head, no direction, and it was clear. So not through my ears at all, which is pretty cool.
Now we can do this wirelessly with microwave. So there's lots of ways to do it, and this just gives a very simple sort of workbench model that gives the principle so people can understand, yeah, you can really do it.
Don't you just love death metal? I got a headbanger to work. Now, this is a fascinating theory. There's just one problem. I'm not sure these piezoelectric transducers are going to catch on as a fashion accessory. And frankly, I don't even know what piezoelectric means. But if we're to believe Begich, the government don't even need these. They're tapping directly into our minds, controlling us with powerful, invisible microwaves that can alter the very way we think and act, making us believe anything they want us to. And that's just the Republicans.
A California woman suffers a brutal campaign of harassment. Is the government trying to control her mind? Clinical psychologist J. Ryan Fuller believes Cheryl's experience isn't due to harassment, but mental illness.
When I heard of some of the things that were described, certainly bring to mind the kinds of content that sometimes people with psychotic disorders have.
He thinks Cheryl has a classic case of delusional disorder.
A delusional disorder is a particular type of psychotic disorder where there's going to be false beliefs held very, very strongly despite evidence being presented again and again to a person. And it's going to be, in that case, when it's a non-bizarre kind of delusion, information that people within that cultural group would believe could happen, but in this case, there doesn't seem to be any evidence to support it. So one might think that their spouse is constantly cheating, and that would be a jealous type. If it's a persecutory type, it could be that I'm being harassed by the police or the FBI, despite the facts that there isn't evidence to confirm that that's actually going on. And so I might believe that my mother-in-law is trying to poison me with her cooking. It's something that could happen in the real world, but there isn't any evidence to confirm it.
But what about strangers who spit at Cheryl in the street?
The interpretation that people are going to be insulting them or hostile or have malicious intent is very, very common. It could be that I'm being harassed by the police or the FBI. There's a conspiracy. There's some kinds of organization or people kind of out to get them that's going to sort of lead to sort of suspiciousness and hypervigilance and things like that.
Ironically, Cheryl could be making it worse.
There is evidence, in fact, that by struggling with it and sort of fighting it and working to change it, that does, in fact, increase the one's stress level and increase anxiety. And now, more than in years past, there's a growing body of literature that, in fact, changing that dynamic, not necessarily changing the belief system, the delusions, but rather changing the strategy of fighting it might be a way to help treat these people. If you think about the delusions themselves, and it really does depend on the content and the person, because someone could be putting themselves and others at great risk, because there are cases where someone with a delusional disorder can be, angry, aggressive, and even physically violent. There are other cases where the real harm is going to come from the negative emotions they experience as a function of the belief. So they end up becoming incredibly depressed, incredibly anxious, incredibly lonely, socially isolating. And so now they're not only suffering all the emotional pain, now they're also denying themselves the social support and possibly the kinds of meaning and vitality they might get from other kind of life pursuits. And so there can be a great deal of suffering.
Is Cheryl Welsh suffering from delusions? Or is the real explanation even more out there? Trish McGregor has written about the paranormal for over 30 years. She thinks she can explain at least one of Cheryl's experiences, her strange encounters with electrical equipment.
My theory about Cheryl Welch is it could be the Pauli effect. The Pauli effect is a label, a term that grew out of a phenomenon that used to happen whenever Wolfgang Pauli, who was a theoretical physicist, would walk into a science lab and equipment would spontaneously break down.
Wolfgang Pauli was a brilliant Nobel Prize-winning physicist who counted Einstein himself among his many admirers. But Pauli is also remembered for his ability to cause lab equipment to malfunction simply by being near it.
In 1950, he walked into a lab in Princeton where they had a particle accelerator, and it caught on fire and burned. This lab in Hamburg banned Pauli from the lab. I mean, that's how prominent this whole phenomenon became.
Even stranger, the Pauli effect didn't stop at the laboratory.
On Pauli's second honeymoon, he and his wife set off for a car trip. He had a new battery in the car, and the battery died. And Pauli said, the Pauli effect, here it is. It would happen in other strange ways, too. One time in Hamburg, Pauli and two friends met for lunch. And after the 3-hour lunch, the two friends realized that the entire time they had been sitting in whipped cream. And Pauli hadn't. It wasn't the fact that he was a klutz. It wasn't like he was stumbling into equipment. He would walk in, and without doing anything, the equipment would spontaneously just break down. They kept saying, oh, it's coincidence, this is scientifically impossible, and yet it kept happening.
Is Cheryl suffering from the Pauli effect? McGregor says we can't dismiss the possibility.
I don't think we can say to Cheryl Welsh, what you experience is not real, because it is. It's real to her.
Is Cheryl Welsh the victim of a series of bizarre coincidences? Was she the target of a government experiment in mind control? Or is it all in her head? Weird. Or what?
Join me next time for more stories that will undoubtedly be weird, or what?
Technology has always brought man to the front of a new era. Old religions die and new religions are born. And now we all have arrived at a turning point in history.
The DoD is developing a parallel to planet Earth with billions of individual nodes to reflect every man, woman and child this side of the dividing line between reality and AR.
That's what's outlined in an internal NSA document leaked by Edward Snowden that focuses on games and virtual worlds.
It's kind of like the Matrix, except the agents are with the NSA and British intelligence, and their targets are terror suspects. Now, if your knowledge of the video game universe begins and ends with Frogger, don't worry, we will break it down for you.
The Sentient World Simulation, SWS, went live in 2007, which represents every person on the planet within this computer matrix as a node, and every node is given an avatar, an identifier. And that is real-time, 24/7 monitoring of every person on the planet. This is primarily, but not exclusively, facilitated by the adiabatic quantum computers produced by D-Wave Corporation.
Now, these documents show that federal agents are trained to, quote, recreate the investigative path in order to effectively cover up where the information came from. And they are told to conceal this information not only from defense lawyers, but also from prosecutors and judges.
The Guardian's calling this a horde of undercover orcs. Please break out the Nerd to English, English to Nerd dictionary and translate that for the rest of us.
We talk often about the quantum computers, the kind of ability they've got to map and model humanity itself because of this Internet of Things that is all around us now as well. We're feeding all of our information back into this quantum computer that's basically got a virtual world where all of us have a digital avatar in there. They're able to manipulate the digital avatar in a virtual world, and that's actually translated to effects in the real world.
Brain-to-machine interfaces open up the possibility of avatar technology. Not simply controlling an external limb or a computer screen, but controlling an entire artificial you, allowing you to be effectively in two places at the same time.
Do we have any idea how many agents might be playing these games at any one time?
It seems to have been quite a big operation. The CIA, the FBI, and the Pentagon even had to reportedly create a special deconfliction group in order to stop all the spies from spying on each other or effectively playing one massive Washington network game of World of Warcraft.
This has been going in parallel development to the model numbers of the D-Wave computers. They work lockstep because the adiabatic quantum computers runs the Sentient World Simulation, which also encompasses Palantir, which we have talked about. This is the new surveillance system that has subsystems all built within it from the intelligence agencies around the world. So SWS is what is manipulating people. And Kev, you said it, the avatars and the nodes, when those are manipulated digitally in the simulation, it manifests physically in the human brain and the physical body. Outside of the SWS, it is like pulling strings. It is like a puppet on a string.
And again, we've been tracking the company D-Wave as well as its connection to Google and NASA and Lockheed Martin as well. These are all companies that have invested in the D-Wave.
What these people have done is turned this technology into a video game, and that is exactly how they approach it. They approach it as though they are playing a cross between Sid Meier's Civilization on their computer and Sims, where they are controlling all of civilization and also controlling people on the individual level.
Documents reviewed by Reuters show that law enforcement agents have been directed to conceal how these investigations truly began. Now, this DEA program has been dubbed the Special Operations Division, or SOD, and it's comprised of over 24 partnership agencies, including the FBI, CIA, NSA, Internal Revenue Service, and the Department of Homeland Security. Much of the SOD's work it's classified, and an official, when officials have asked that its precise location be identified, they won't give it up. It's somewhere in Virginia, but they don't want to say where exactly it is. What are your thoughts on this?
The location of somewhere, I'm really not sure why this is. People know where the NSA is, people know where the CIA headquarters are, and people know where the president vacations. I really don't understand this overclassification at all.
But apparently, so many agencies were engaged in playing video games for national security that a deconfliction group was created to make sure the government agents were not accidentally spying on each other.
This has been going in parallel development to the model numbers of the D-Wave computers. They work lockstep because the adiabatic quantum computers runs the Sentient World Simulation, which also encompasses Palantir, which we have talked about. This is the new surveillance system that has subsystems all built within it.
They're running everything that's happening in society parallel, and they've got a little dot in their matrix for everybody. This is a game society. They know where it's been, they know where it's going, and they know where it's going because they're steering people into the direction it wants to go.
There are an enormous number, mind-bogglingly large number, of parallel realities, as real as this one, that have different consistent histories. So imagine a world where all of the laws of physics as we know them are obeyed, but different decisions were made along the way. Different decisions at the level of tiny microscopic particles, different decisions all the way up to what you chose to eat for lunch, and whether you chose to come to this session or not.
They are building false realities into which they want to induct you so they can play God.
The overall effect of this technology is one that can control the mood, the attitudes, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, and thus the motivations and then the actions of the target. All day, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It is infuriating. It is highly, highly illegal, and it must be stopped now.
The Human Genome Project was carried out at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, where I was a staff scientist for 5 years. They were tracking people in the lab by the electromagnetic frequency emitted by individuals' DNA. The DNA in every living thing has a unique frequency and signal. That is what they're using, what they're focusing on, and what they're weaponizing to completely control us.
What they do is they go and get your garbage in front of your house and get your DNA. And then once they've got your DNA sequence, they can then go to a supercomputer and they can biocode directed energy attacks that will only go and bioresonate with your body. So that 3 people can be standing right next to you and nobody's going to feel the harassment except you, because these signals are biocoded to your body's tuning only. And then they can send down D2K, they can send down any symptom they want, because they're in full control of the bioresonance of your bioenergy.
All they need is to kind of identify your DNA fingerprint like with your name, and then they can watch you 24 hours a day. This is one part. The other part
so we are running a GPS system.
Yes.
And so once you have connected the targeted individual with the frequency and they resonate together, then you have a perfect avenue upon which to send and receive information back and forth. And that's exactly how they manipulate someone's thoughts. They send voices into someone's head. They manipulate their emotions. They manipulate their behavior. And then that's also how they receive back from the individual in real time the vital signs, the emotions, the thoughts, what the person's seeing, what the person's hearing. And then all that information, of course, is rendered on a computer elsewhere via software, and it can be monitored and tracked in real time.
They control the mind the same way that they teach the AI computer systems at the high level of AI. And we're talking about AI that is so sophisticated that it operates a sentient world simulation, so sophisticated that it actually taps in and controls the mind.
And you start thinking about us being the qubits in some massive giant quantum computing simulation. It's almost as if they're either trying to harness or to recreate what is commonly referred to as a collective consciousness.
If you construct a model of the human brain, you can then plug people into this hive mind.
Robots the smartest people. Artificial intelligence, AI. The idea is to port the software from the human brain.
And Google was the primary interested party that pulled this whole thing together. What they're going to do is apply this machine to an area that I think is fundamentally important. It's the crux of our future as humans. And that's, can we build machines like us?
So rather than hardware and software, they're actually going to a new form of software, and that is the biological replacement of the human brain functioning as a quantum computer biologically, and then loading people, integrating people into this new form of brain.
There will be a virtual version of your brain as far as data is concerned, of what molecules, what chemicals, and whatever make up the actual physical brain. That data could be stored in the computer.
What I am principally is not this material stuff, but a pattern of information. Well, then if the pattern is the essence, and if you copy the pattern to whatever level of precision you need, then that copy that has the exact same pattern should be me.
You can make a good enough model of an entire brain, and that model would have the same input-output behavior as the original. So if you talk to it, it might talk back. If you ask it to do things, it might do them. And if we could do that, everything would change.
The quantum computer, they're trying to create neural networks. Well, what's the best way to create neural networks? Plug in the real brain, right? Because the simulations can happen. The quantum computer can simulate a human brain now.
This is why you are receiving voice-to-skull transmissions. This is why you are being attacked with microwave and frequency weapons. You are unfortunately being used by the national security state, the military-industrial intelligence complex of this country, for the purposes of researching and developing highly sophisticated state-of-the-art technology that is primarily concerned with the human mind and how it operates, how to hack it, and how to harness its computing power to inform AI technology in the future and inform the computer systems of our military intelligence, and major corporations in this country.
If you start looking at quantum computing and where it's going, it's pretty freaky sort of stuff. And thinking about the world as an electrical universe and the fact that we are energetic electrical beings, that's how we work. Everything is electrical. Every signal that runs through our body is electricity. Everything, every thought we have, everything we feel, every touch, everything we speak, it's all the result of electromagnetic signals floating around our body, impulses that come from our heart, from our brain, the way we feel a bench when we touch it. This is an electrical signal that's sent to your brain that tells you what the bench feels like. So it's all electromagnetics. It's all firing of electromagnetism through our synapses and all this sort of stuff.
The adiabatic quantum computer is linked to 7 billion human brains. It is now, in its own language of cryptology, able to function independent of any oversight throughout the world with its own form of communication, its own form of code. And it is able to link everyone on the planet at this point.
You cannot compromise. You cannot negotiate. You cannot surrender to a computer. It will continue to do what it is programmed to do.
No difference between digital code and genetic code. And because digital code can move as an electromagnetic wave, basically close to the speed of light, we can now move biology at the speed of light. It's one of the few science announcements we got an immediate response from the President and the Pope. The President asked his Bioethics Commission to start looking at this as their #1 issue. And the Vatican released a statement that all we did was change one of the engines of life. And it could lead to some important advances, but it wasn't creating life itself. But DNA is not the engine of life, it's the software of life. The proteins are the engine. They're driven directly by that code in a very understandable, predictable fashion now. So this has lots of implications in lots of different areas.
If you try to understand this entire topic, the DNA has 3 different functions. One is communication by transmitting and receiving biophotons. And these are strands or parts of strands that do this. The second one is producing substances by DNA producing RNA and RNA producing proteins. This is kind of the order of things happening in the cell. So there are parts of the DNA that are there to create certain substances. And a third part where people are doing research is the attempt to abuse DNA as logic elements. It's like building a little computer by using these single units a DNA is built out of.
This is not the view that people necessarily have of themselves, that you're basically a DNA-driven software device. Every cell on this planet works that way in a biological to mechanical kind of fashion. There's no brain controlling what happens with DNA reading and protein synthesis in your cells. The combination of 100 trillion cells gives different people different abilities to make wonderful music, to make science advances, to think, but every one of those cells operates in the same fashion. And that means we will be able to decode how the brain functions by understanding these same mechanisms.
DNA resonance code and the brain code speak the same language. If you decipher DNA code, you will decipher the brain code. While all other research is prohibited, restricted, unfunded, the brain-computer interface is really well funded these days. Defense agencies all have open programs to develop brain-computer interface. It opens the doors for the mind control. And also it opens the door for technology-assisted telepathy. Let's define the telepathy. Telepathy in Wikipedia is defined as communication from mind to mind without the use of physical senses. So we can use computer to link it to the, or technology to link it to the one mind and then to another mind and make an interface, transferring the information.
And it comes down to a kind of system that resembles old-fashioned telephone system. You have like dial-in codes, and each frequency you give in, like do-do-do-do-do-do-do, every frequency you give in is switching on one single DNA element, making it open to take the next step. So basically what you can do with it is creating synthetic DNA or RNA that is possible to be activated with a dial-in sequence of frequencies.
But wouldn't it be great if you could do these thousands of different molecular IDs or RNAs in a single brain, and that way they're integrated. Every voxel, every pixel of every section can be aligned, and you know where you are. And not just for the RNAs and other molecular identifiers, but what the brain was thinking during activity. So the question is, do I see a path forward for changing the tagging for readout so that we can do it in vivo real time? Is that the question? Yeah. So yes, we're working in a direction where the molecular recording devices we have will be able to read out optically, not through optical fibers, which is just as bad as electrodes in a certain sense in the crowding problem, fitting them into the brain, but via the circulatory system, which is pervasive. There's essentially one capillary per neuron in the brain, so it's a really excellent way of interfacing optically. And also the optics doesn't go very far. 4 centimeters is heroic, and you need a pretty big light source, but just going the 10 microns across the endothelial cell is pretty easy. You basically convert DNA information into ionic information into computer information. So that's going from DNA to ions, but for the brain, we're interested in the opposite, going from ions to DNA.
And this is a completely new technology that, like the Morgellons, is light-based. It's like building a little computer by using these single units a DNA is built out of.
We can digitize life and regenerate life from the digital world. And just as the ribosome can convert the analog message in mRNA into a protein robot, it's becoming standard now in the world of science to convert digital code into proteins, viruses, and now cells. Scientists send digital code to each other instead of sending genes or proteins. Now we're in the process of building a much smaller, simpler, what I call digital conversion device. So my digital biological converter is going to work somewhat like the telephone, where it takes digital waves, it converts it into sound waves, you can hear it. Only it will have a small box that you can attach to a computer to in fact receive a digital wave and convert it into a protein.
Within the tubulin proteins, which a microtubule is made of, an array of electron-conducting hydrophobic pockets allow energy to pass through each tubulin in multiple potential directions. This forms a larger network of possible patterns that energy can exist in the cylindrical lattice. In each hydrophobic pocket, the electron clouds of indole and phenylalanine rings may become shifted one way or another. Much like a bit of data in a computer, a 1 or a 0, this quantum bit can also exist in a state of quantum superposition between both states. This alters the pathways that energy can inhabit in the microtubule.
These proteins have been described as nature's robots. And if you think about it, for every single task in the cell, every imaginable task is described by Tanford and Reynolds. There is a unique protein to carry out that task. It's programmed when to go on, when to go off. And it does this based on its structure. It doesn't have consciousness. It doesn't have a control from a mind or a higher center. Everything a protein does is built into its linear code derived from the DNA code.
The DNA in the nucleus is connected electromagnetically with microtubules in the axon. And you can see on the photograph, it's known that microtubules surround the nucleus, and there is an interface, electromagnetic, not mechanical, not chemical, but electromagnetic interface between microtubules and DNA.
And so the resonant frequency of the DNA is what they use to fine-tune the technology to take total control of your entire body, spirit, soul, being, and mind. It's total not only mind control, it's total human being control. And it is the essential element that allows them to manipulate your emotions so totally and completely, to manipulate your thoughts so totally and completely, to manipulate everything you do and see and hear and think and feel every single minute of every single day so totally and completely.
Hey guys, Demon Hunter here. Okay, I just wanted to break this down again. This is what the Yeshua has revealed to me, Jesus. You've got the tree of life there, the toroidal field, and then you've got Satan having created his smart dust dome, the oak tree there, and you got the vine going up at the serpent. He's vacuum sealed God's natural earth frequency. Okay, he's looking to duplicate, invert, twist everything of Yahweh, and he's created his own dome within God's or Yahweh's enclosed system. Okay, and then you've got Sky Dome Atlantis at the very top. Okay, that is, you think in terms of the Hunger Games when they're controlling everything below in all the different districts. So there's a city atop the Sky Dome, as I've proven over and over. And you got the portal there where Abaddon has capped the dome. He's come in, okay, Abaddon, Apollyon. He's capped the dome atop Sky Dome Atlantis. It's where Skynet is. I believe the AI is up there. And then you got also Lucifer, the false light bearer with its false luminescence, the sun simulator. And yeah, so now if we go ahead and look at this sign, it says danger, and then below it, it's going to have, and you got the cube up there, and then below it says no internal combustion motors, where you've got the cross. So Yeshua is saying no to all this smart dust and the transhumanism agenda. You got the 13 number there, and also the 911 there, if you flip that 6 upside down. And when you also notice a reflection in the water there, that what they're doing is they're bending the light up there. They've got parabolic dishes up there that's concealing Sky Dome Atlantis and all their track systems with all their different simulators, planet simulators, sun simulators, the whole 9 yards. So again, in short, you've got Satan having capped the dome. Okay, there's two domes. Yahweh's enclosed system. Okay, and then you got Satan, who's inverted, twisted, polluted. That of Yahweh created his own ionized smart dust technocracy-based dome. You see the pentagram, or that's the hibiscus. It's got 5 petals, so it's got the pentagram over the dome. And here you could see all the different. You see the machinery in there. You can see Satan in there and the filth atop the sky dome. See, and then you got the sewer, the W, the 2 U's, the Amityville looking to take over, and you got the 1966, the 666 hallmark there. Okay. And then you got a beware of dog sign there, dog star Sirius. So all in all, what I'm thinking, what we're seeing here is very possible that this whole coronavirus thing is caused through this targeting program, where we all have the nanobots in us and smart dust, even though people are trying to, get that stuff out by using different natural methods. A lot of people still have it. So, and being a targeted individual myself, I know what it's capable of doing, where it could, they could fry your insides out if they wanted to, and they can also drain your energy, they can lower your immune systems, and they can also, drop you dead if they wanted to. So I think everybody should keep that in the back of their heads. And then I believe this whole vaccine thing, based off my research, what I'm seeing is I believe they're looking, meaning the Canaanites, the ones behind the scenes, the line of the serpent seed, okay? They're looking to impregnate the lost or humanity with their black goo, their programmable matter and gold, alchemeric nanites vaccine. And I'm working on something now with my friends Bells, where we're trying to decode all this, but I would not take that vaccine at all, and believe that it's going to have their black blood in there, per se, the mind virus. They're looking to infect everybody, because everybody, like I said, is getting all this smart dust out of them naturally, so they need to infect you, even though the black ooze raining down from atop the dome, and either through these gateway portals that are opening up through the stratospheric aerosol injection program, the chemtrail network, with all these aerials and demons flooding in through these chemtrail gateway portals they've created. So the black goo and smart dust rain down on us, but they want to infect. They want to literally inject it into us, and that's what these vaccines are going to be for. Forced vaccinations at that. And then you got the ID 2020 biometric chip that comes with the vaccination. You take the vaccination, then they're going to brand you with a biometric ID, so you can plug into their one hive mind and digital currency, cryptocurrency. So it's all nuts. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and show you a short prior video that I did, and that's my dog Heavens. She's been with me through all this, where the Yeshua has revealed all this to me, and her name was Heavens before I got her. So just amazing what he showed me. So I encourage everybody to take this information to Yeshua and seek a confirmation. Don't take my word for it, but pray upon it. And if felt led to, please share the information. And again, I'm going to share a short clip here revealing Sky Dome Atlantis, a city that's atop the Sky Dome, where I believe they're probably monitoring everybody, the whole 9 yards, just like Hunger Games. And again, this whole ionized smart dust dome that Satan's created, this technocracy-based kingdom, is capable of live augmented virtual reality to the point where they can actually create UFOs, deities in the sky, you name it. And I too, at the same time, would make sure that you're filled with oil, and make sure you're not sinning, because that's how they're opening gateways and portals to your pineal gland. All this sodomy on Pornhub that everybody's watching, and all this witchcraft and sigils on Netflix. You gotta turn that stuff off, because that's how they're accessing, hijacking your pineal gland. All right, you guys have a mighty blessed one. You guys enjoy. Stay armored up. Know that Yeshua loves you, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.